Hi, welcome to the OSU's Exercises Medicine Wellness webinar. I am Kelly Urs. I am the Wellness Program Manager with the Exercises Medicine program. I am excited to introduce to you Katharine Feister and Eric Colombo from our Lifestyle Management Programming, focusing on holiday planning for all of you this evening. Talking about navigating healthy meals and stress around the holidays. So very timely topic. So I will turn this over to both of you and let you share your expertise.
Thank you for the introduction, Kelly. All right. So for the first half of this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on some different ways that we can navigate food choices during the holidays, and then also talk about some healthy holiday swaps. And then afterwards, I'll turn it over to Katharine. So I'll just jump right in. So it's no surprise that navigating food around the holidays is certainly a challenge for all of us. So, that time when Halloween rolls around at the end of October, all the way up until New Year's Day, it really feels like, most of our schedule and most of the things we're doing, whether it's family events, social events, they feel super food focused. So that is a very common theme that we're all experiencing right now. And that can certainly make it challenging when it's, you're trying to plan out your food choices and, navigate all the holiday food that might be coming up. So, and then on top of that as well, our routines greatly change during this time from late October to New Year's. So there's a lot of time off work. We're traveling to go see friends and family. And then there's plenty of other commitments that come up too. So a common question that I always get when, the holiday season rolls around is, how could I possibly plan ahead with all of these things going on? It just feels like my schedule's so changed. I really can't get a grip on, my behavior, my eating, my exercise changes that I want to make right now. And then I always like to, kind of push back on that. We know every year around the holidays that there is going to be a lot of, disruption to our normal routine. And so even though it feels abnormal, we can expect those changes to come along. So I am here today to talk about some different ways that we can actually plan ahead to kind of, get ahead of the curve and, work around some of these disruptions to our normal routine. So like I said, planning ahead is absolutely key when it comes to navigating food around the holidays at this time. So first I want to start by talking about some of the unstructured time. So outside of those social, family, or other holiday related events that we're going to. Outside of those, whether it's, the morning, afternoon leading up to the event, the days, surrounding some of those holiday events, we want to keep as many structured meals and snacks as we can. So you're still doing your meal planning, still having regular meals throughout the day, certainly not skipping meals. We want to just keep it as normal as possible and stick to our nutrition goals as much as we can during that time. At the same time, we want to make sure we're staying physically active. So, while it might feel like with the travel or the holiday events that we're going to, it might be hard to stay physically active. I would just encourage you all to, plan times throughout, the week that for sure you can set aside even 10, 20 minutes to, go out for a walk if it's nice enough out. Just do something, chair yoga, something at the house that's easy too, that you could do to stay physically active. It's nice just to have those routines and make life feel a little bit more normal while, it might feel a little bit chaotic during the holidays. So keeping as much of a routine as you can. So then some of these other tips are more so, leading up to the actual holiday event or, while we're at the holiday event. So definitely, we want to make sure we're monitoring intake of high calorie beverages, whether they're alcoholic, sodas, pop, juice. That's not to say we can't enjoy those things, but with all things, it's just moderation is key. So those calories can add up very quickly. They're high in sugar a lot of the time too, added sugar. So we just want to monitor our intake of some of those high calorie beverages. And then in the same time, we want to make sure we're still staying hydrated with water, whether it's alternating between, maybe a pop and then a water, or just drinking mostly water throughout the event. That's a good way to ensure that we're going to stay hydrated. I forgot to mention this earlier too. Leading up to the event or during the event too, if you are food tracking, which we know can be very helpful for monitoring our food intake and making sure we're sticking to our goals, I would recommend continuing with food tracking if you can. I don't want you to get bogged down with pulling out your phone and tracking all this food during the actual event, but leading up to the event though, maybe still food track like you normally would outside of, some of those holiday events. Definitely don't want you skipping meals. So a lot of people might have this tendency to, maybe skip a lunch if they're going to have a large dinner at one of these holiday events. And to that, I would, certainly say, I don't want you skipping meals. The reason being is when we skip meals leading into maybe one of these holiday events, we're going to be so starving that we might feel the need to overindulge or eat everything in sight, and we'll end up uncomfortably full, or eating things that might not align with our nutrition goals just because of that impulse that we're feeling. So for that reason, you want to make sure stick to your routine. Don't skip breakfast the morning of Christmas brunch or whatever event you're going to. Still have your regularly timed meals. While you're at the event, I would recommend limiting grazing. A really good way to do this is, seat yourself away from the food, or don't hang out around the table if you're talking and with friends or family. That can be an easy way to kind of limit the temptation to graze on food while you're there. It certainly happens even when we're not hungry. So just being cognizant of that is really important. Katharine will jump into this a little bit more during her slides, but we want to make sure we're practicing mindful eating, listening to our hunger cues. And a good way to do that, ensure we're doing that, is to eat slowly throughout the event. So, if there's a lot of good food present, there's no need for us to rush through our plate. Eat slowly, talk in between bites, drink water in between bites. No need to rush the meal. Using smaller plates can also be helpful. This is more of a psychological technique, but if we are using smaller plates, of course, it limits the amount of food that we can add on to there. So just another way that you can almost trick yourself into, sticking to a portion control strategy rather than using a very large plate, filling it all the way to the maximum, and then overindulging. If you can, I would recommend bringing some sort of dish that works for you, whether it's a appetizer, entree, dessert. Certainly, it can be stressful leading into an event if you don't know what food is going to be there. So at least bringing your own dish, you'll know there's 1, 2, 3 things, however many you bring, that'll certainly work for you. So that can take a lot of the stress out of it. Good opportunity to make sure you'll have something there that, aligns with your health goals. And then certainly too, if you have dietary restrictions, I would certainly recommend bringing something with you. When it comes to your plate, and we'll talk about how to build a healthy plate, but I always say, fill up on those veggies, fruit too, fruit and veggies, and then the protein first. That way, we're filling up on the nutrient dense items. And then afterwards, you will still talk about carb sources that you'll have, but, we want to fill up on the nutrient dense things first. And then, of course, this is the time of year where we get to enjoy food that's not normally around. So make sure you do try a variety of things that you normally wouldn't have throughout the year. And then lastly, we're going to keep it simple and talk about ways to build a healthy plate, but we want to make sure we're just increasing the nutrient value of our meals. So with some of the swaps we'll talk about, and then also with the plate building that we'll do. So I always like to tell, our participants in our lifestyle programs, let's keep it simple. Let's just think about balance. And so, the next question is, okay, what does a balanced plate look like? So we always recommend using the plate method when building our meals. So the plate method involves taking your plate, cut it right down the middle. On one half, you're going to load up with non-starchy vegetables. So I listed some examples there. Essentially, a non-starchy vegetable is anything that's not peas, corn, or potatoes. So anything else is going to be a great option. Of course, the more color, the better. That increases the nutrient value. But we want to make sure we're loading up half of our plate with 2 servings of non-starchy vegetables. I like to, encourage individuals to think seasonally. So, incorporate some of that produce that goes really well this time of year. So some more seasonal dishes with the butternut squash, apples, pumpkins, cranberries, all really good options. And then on the other half of your plate, you'll make sure you have your protein source. So I just listed some examples there of some more, we see a lot of turkey, ham, chicken during the holidays. Certainly it could be a vegetable source of protein, or a plant source of protein rather. So like nuts, beans, seeds, or you could do eggs, yogurt, whatever your protein source is going to be, just make sure there's a protein source there. And then lastly, we'll have our healthy carb source. So listed some more examples there. It could be baked potato. It could be corn on the cob. It could be a bowl of peas. Or it could also be some of these other options too that we might think of. So if we're doing something like a roll or some sort of bread, opt for the whole grain option if you can. That's going to be higher in fiber, higher in nutrient value. But understandably, if anything, just aim for that balance. So make sure we have our plates looking like this in these proportions, and then we know we're doing a good job. So we'll keep it simple with that. So now getting into some of these swaps that we like to talk about. I found this great graphic from the USDA about they called it their My Plate Holiday Makeover. And so they give some really good examples here of swaps that they might make to help make their plates a little bit more nutrient dense and a little bit more conducive to nutrition goals. So they talk about, opting for fresh fruit as a dessert because it is sweet instead of, pumpkin pie per se. If you are baking a good and bringing it for a dessert, you could use pureed fruits to cut down on some of the fat and replace some of that butter in the recipe. There's a lot of great recipes online that already do that. So if you haven't done it before, you can Google, they use applesauce or banana to kind of replace some of that butter. Brightening your meal with, fruits and vegetables like we talked about, lots of color, swapping the grains. So we're opting for whole grains, using spices and herbs to season instead of a lot of salt, sugar. We already talked about the beverages. So drinking mostly water to help manage those calories, opting for, some of the skim milk or, lighter dairy products as opposed to the full fat dairy. That can certainly save on some calories. And then limiting toppings of, they say gravy here. I also included in my bullet points here, cream sauces, butters, dressings. Doesn't mean we have to cut them out entirely. Those just happen to be the more calorie dense options that we're adding to our plate. So I just recommend using enough to flavor the food for taste. So add a little bit, try it first. If you need to add a little bit more, go ahead. But that is just something to be aware of with adding gravy, sauces, dressings, those sorts of things. And then I added some other examples here. So instead of, doing a deep fried turkey, we could do some roasted turkey. That'll certainly cut down some of the calories from the fat in the turkey. We could sneak in some vegetables by doing cauliflower, mashed potatoes, or mashed sweet potatoes. So a lot of people always ask, what's the difference between regular versus sweet potatoes? The nutrient profiles are just a little dense or a little different. Sweet potatoes being a little bit more nutrient dense, higher in vitamin A, higher in fiber. So they're both okay. They're both good options for your starch. But, I might opt for the sweet potato if I were going to change something there. Loading up on those roasted vegetables, incorporating spice combinations to limit the use of butter, sugar, and salts. And then ultimately, next, I want to talk about some healthy holiday boards. So if, we're not doing these swaps, this could be another good idea for you to incorporate, this would be a good appetizer dish. So these healthy holiday boards, I saw this in another article from a dietitian, and I really liked this concept. So very, very similar to charcuterie board, but the key differences being, these are a little bit more nutrient dense, but very, very similar concept. So they're shareable snack boards, and they focus more on plant-based sources of protein. So some more nuts, seeds, as opposed to the processed meats, the processed cheeses. They use a lot more fresh cheese instead of the processed cheese. Wide variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grain products. So as you can see here in this example, they have the crackers there. So they do a whole grain cracker. You could do, some whole grain bread, toast it, slice it up, put it on the tray too. And then healthy sources of fat. So again, the fresh cheese and the nuts, seeds, whatever you have on there. So I listed the components here. Wide variety of things that we want to add onto there. A lot of color, a lot of flavor, very easy to throw together. You're ensuring that you have balance by using something like this. And it's also great for the occasions that we're going to. So, very social based, whether it's with friends and family, it's a good time to connect, and we're, maybe snacking on food in between. These would be good ideas for something to bring as an appetizer. So added the components here. And then I have a specific example on this next slide of a Christmas board idea. So we can certainly share this after the fact. I thought this was a good one too that I wanted to include. But yeah, I would certainly recommend, any of those tips before. And then also, if you're looking for a fun seasonal idea, I would highly recommend doing this Christmas board or some other holiday snack board. And with that, I will turn it now over to Katharine.
Before Katharine, you get started, Eric, I have a question.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Margaret's asking, how do you know the difference between fresh versus processed cheese?
That's a great question. I mean, I would go get it from, if you go into the deli area and you ask them, they can point you in the direction of some of their fresh cheeses and, get you a cut of it. The more processed cheese would just be in the fridge in the dairy aisle. So I would opt more towards the, what they have more in the deli area. So they could certainly point you in the right direction. Yeah, great question. Great question.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll move into some mindful eating strategies to build off of the tips and strategies that Eric has already mentioned. You'll see on the screen here a hunger scale. And this is a wonderful tool that you can walk into any environment and rely on if you have some concerns about eating in these social events or at some of these different family gatherings that sometimes can be very stressful. And I know it's part of our theme tonight. So you'll see on here that there is a 1 to 10 scale. 1 would represent that you're beyond hungry, having no energy, feeling faint, irritable. We've also heard this like hangry term that oftentimes would hit right around this level of the scale. 10 would be the exact opposite, beyond full. Being in discomfort, pain, feeling like, oh, that like heaviness. Now, these would be the 2 points on the scale, and we're trying to avoid both of those. So there are those key decision points described at 3 and at 7, right? 3 would indicate that there's probably some real physical hunger and that this would be a good time to go ahead and eat. 7 would represent, however, a satiety level, a fullness that we might actually want to stop eating. So this mindful eating zone on 4, 5, and 6 is a wonderful space where you can find that you are in a good position with your eating. Now, sometimes what happens is that as we're walking into the holidays, we know the foods that are likely to be very triggering and so with that, this is a great tool that you could use to avoid feeling like you can't have any of it. So as Eric mentioned, you can plan ahead and know which ones might be worth it. Part of mindful eating also would represent really enjoying food, really recognizing flavor, taking a moment to look at it, see what colors, what's the texture, and taking small bites, right? In this 4 kind of space, the 4 level, where you're beginning to eat, but you're also in a spot where you can enjoy it. Because if we hit those higher, the 1, 2, and 3, it's sometimes really hard to actually enjoy those foods. And then we'll say, who ate it? And then maybe feeling like we overconsumed those foods. So this is, again, a tool that you can carry with you, as well as taking some time to really notice the enjoyment of some of these foods. Now, on the next slide, I want to pull up some ideas, because sometimes what we have happen is that we have a cue to eat during these times of high stress, and we're not actually physically hungry. So we might use that scale to say, yeah, I'm having this urge, this craving, but I'm not actually physically hungry. And so this would provide some alternatives that if you're noticing this, that there is a strong craving, and this happens a lot for the people I work with who identify as an emotional eater, particularly with stress eating during this time of year, where we can insert these. So there is a approach that we teach in Living Well called the 5 Ds. 2 of those are distraction and delaying of eating. So if you're in a position over the coming weeks where you're feeling some of these strong cravings, that you're able to use that scale and say, no, I'm not actually physically hungry, we could introduce some of these as alternatives. So as you're sitting here, they're up on the screen. Don't worry, I'm not going to read them all out. I'd encourage you maybe to take a picture of this material, or actually begin to create a list of some of these practices that maybe would help with any delaying or distraction from eating when you find that you might have those strong cravings. On the next slide, you'll see that I have pulled together a sort of novel concept for stress catching. This is from the National Institutes of Mental Health. And you'll see on the screen here, one of those old kind of finger folded up catchers, and that you'll see that on the right hand, there's some examples with numbers and letters. And so if you're interested in this concept, it could be used directly with these concepts of delaying and distracting of eating, particularly if you're a stress eater, but they could also be used towards developing these interventions when it comes to managing stress over the coming weeks or beyond that. So part of what I have heard in the years that I've worked with people around stress management is that managing stress is stressful. Thinking about stress, deciding what to do about it. So part of what I'm guessing was underlying some of the decision to create this is that it takes away some of that stress. If you just have to say, let me select 7, and then you move the catcher 7 times, and then you say, okay, what's under orange? Because that's how it would flip open. And in this situation, it would say, laugh, find something funny. I will oftentimes say like find a, funny cat video if you like cats or something on YouTube that makes you giggle, and that you would know that that's an easy go-to option. So on the next screen, I want to give you some quick stress busters. So even if you decide that that other structure of the catcher isn't a good fit, this evening, I wanted to provide you with some alternatives that you could build. Again, what I have found is that it's really important to pre-identify these stress busters and then have them with you in some format so that you can access them, because our decision making tends to not be at its peak when we're dealing with stress or if we're having strong cravings. So you'll see that there's a number of them on here. Tonight is not going to be a situation where we're going to give a pop quiz, so you do not need to know them all. I'm hopeful that maybe as you're listening to me and reading through these, you're identifying maybe 2 to 3 that maybe would be a fit for you. So as you encounter these times of increased stress over the holiday season, you can test one of these out. The next slide has a number of other quick stress busters available to you as well. And you'll see that these tend to be geared around environment. So other positive sensory cues you can see on here. So ways that you can change your environment through things that smell good, feel good, physically as well as an emotional state, being able to feel connected, less isolated. All of those can be very important. You'll see there's the drink a cup of tea. I consistently get very good feedback around this, even if I have someone who doesn't love tea. The actual act of selecting out, their favorite mug, their favorite flavor, pouring it, smelling it, right? It invokes breathing. There's a scent. You hold it on your chest, and then you can even dump it down the sink if it's not something that you actually prefer to consume. But there's a number on here. So again, my hope tonight is that maybe a handful of these might stand out and that you could record them in some way and draw on them in the coming weeks. On the next slide, I want to point out that we have some other materials available through OSU. You'll see if you go to our healthwise.net and you can put in a search for quick tips, reducing holiday stress. They have a number of materials. They also have a area dedicated to the topic of depression and the holidays. NAMI has a wonderful blog about tips for managing the holiday blues, because we do know that that is a real thing that people are encountering right now. And on the next slide, I also wanted to highlight, even though I know we have limited time, that this can be a very stressful time, and sometimes that stress is building up, that it would really be beneficial to get some help. We, of course, have our 988 crisis lifeline now available. It is a great resource, even if you're not in a position where you're concerned that you might hurt yourself. But if you're feeling that emotional stress, or if you're encountering somebody who's hitting a high level of emotional distress, please encourage them to reach out to the staff who are, or the individuals who are staffing that lifeline, because it is a very hard time right now. We are, of course, getting hit with the time change, season change. So we have people who have increased winter blues, adding then holiday blues, and on top of other mental health concerns, and it can be a very challenging period. So just wanted to give an additional resource in case that could be impactful. With that, we only have a few minutes left, but I want to make sure we get some time for questions. So Kelly, let me turn it over to you and see if there's anything in the chat for us to address.
All right. Thank you both so much. It was a very informative talk tonight, and hopefully everyone was able to select some tips that can help them to navigate the holidays in a healthy way. Peggy's asking about getting a copy of the slides. And yes, I can certainly share those slides with everyone in attendance tonight. The webinar is also recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. You can find it there in just a few days. It should be live there as well as all of our past webinars are there as well. So you can check that YouTube website out. But I will forward these slides if Eric and Katharine will share them with me. I can certainly do that. So waiting to see. Okay, Margaret's asking, Eric, I think this question's for you. Is gluten-free any healthier if you have no allergy?
No, not necessarily. I think people conflate gluten-free or vegan with being healthier, but there's plenty of dishes that are gluten-free or vegan that might be high calorie, high fat. It might not be the best choice. So certainly it can be a good option that's inclusive when you bring gluten-free options to a holiday event. Sometimes easier on the stomach for certain people, even if you don't have an allergy or intolerance to it, but not, on surface level, not necessarily healthier.
Is it more important to look at calories or carbs?
Both are very important. The calories, yes, calories are very important. I would look at the calories. With carbs, it also depends on the type of carbs. So are we eating, simple carbs like candy and fruit juice that are, spiking our blood sugar and we're digesting it really quickly? Or are we having some more complex carbohydrates like, fruits and vegetables and whole grain products? Those have, a lot more fiber. They're full of starch. They digest much slower. They don't spike our blood sugar. So certainly the type of carb is also very important. So I would say looking at both would be good.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? One more here. What is the name of the YouTube channel? Let me pull that up for you. We'll put it in the chat. All right, so I added the YouTube channel to the chat. So that will be there if you want to copy that. So again, I appreciate everyone taking some time to spend with us this evening. Thank you to Eric and Katharine for being here and sharing your time and your expertise. I hope you all join us next month in January. We'll be past all the stress of the holidays. We'll be joined by Alan Summer, who will be talking about the topic is, does exercise and diet work for weight loss? So we'll find out in January. So everyone have a great holiday season, and thank you again for joining us.